the flip side of Trump Derangement Syndrome. Trump Derangement Syndrome is not officially listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, at least not yet. And yet, I almost fell for this article that said it was, but apparently it was a satirical website that suggests I shouldn't think anything they publish is real. I should, however, mercilessly mock anyone who does. And that, I think, is a large reason for a lot of our political divide nowadays. The encouragement to mercilessly mock other people, even if they're your own family and friends. And while Trump Derangement Syndrome may not be an official mental diagnosis, it's clearly a real thing when it comes to the illiberal, regressive antics of many Democrat politicians and their media allies, and just people in general who had a total meltdown when Donald Trump was elected president. This screaming girl could very well be the poster child of the Trump Derangement Syndrome that infected the minds of millions of people like a mental COVID during and after Trump's presidency. The history of the term actually began with Bush Derangement Syndrome, which was coined in 2003 by the late great political commentator Charles Krauthammer. And since then, that snarky joke has clearly taken on a life of its own. Though the Bush and Trump Derangement Syndrome terms have been used to mock people on the left, there is a flip side to this coin. Because the very conservatives that love mercilessly mocking others about Trump Derangement Syndrome, it could be said that many of them also suffer from Trump Derangement Syndrome, but for very different reasons. It's already been called out by a few people that Trump Derangement Syndrome runs both ways. When it comes to Democrats and illiberal progressives, which I'll lovingly refer to as regressives, Trump Derangement Syndrome was a very real phenomenon in the form of Russiagate, the impeachment of Trump, accusing Trump voters of white supremacy even if they were black, and after COVID, people who thoroughly politicized mask wearing and vaccinations. But when it comes to conservatives, Trump Derangement Syndrome works in a very different way. It rears its ugly head in blindly believing that Trump is the only qualified Republican who could run for president in 2024, almost to the point of electing him king. And if you think I'm exaggerating, there was actually a man in Pennsylvania who was arrested for walking into a store, brandishing guns, and claiming Trump to be President King. Granted, that man was mentally ill, but enough quote-unquote normal people followed the baseless claims of the QAnon conspiracy theory. Too many people fell for that ridiculous theory that was almost as crazy as Scientology's claim that Lord Xenu created the universe a trillion years ago and dropped souls onto the earth, or however that one goes. Only instead of Lord Xenu being the ultimate villain, according to QAnon, Trump was the ultimate hero who was going to vindicate John F. Kennedy's assassination by proving he was still alive, and somehow Trump was going to usher in the second coming of Jesus Christ. Fortunately, not all die-hard Trump supporters fell for QAnon, though some congressional representatives did, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. However, even for those who could see through the lunacy and idiocy of QAnon, they still think Trump should run again in 2024, despite the January 6th disaster that Trump is responsible for. Just the simple fact that Donald Trump thought he could convince Mike Pence to overturn the Electoral College count on January 6th goes to show that Donald Trump, despite having been president, is either thoroughly ignorant of basic government functions or he has a thorough disregard for them, much like any dictator would. Now, for anyone still listening to this video, first of all, thank you for watching. Please subscribe and give it a like. And please note that I'm not out to insult Trump supporters or their opposite counterparts. My family and friends are divided almost 50-50 down these lines. Plus, I want to help solve problems and end this political polarization, not fuel it. And I actually voted for Trump in 2020, though I couldn't vote for him back in 2016, though I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton either. I voted for Gary Johnson, who at the time I thought stood for the most sensible policies, despite completely screwing up his chances at winning the election after his infamous "What is Aleppo" gaffe regarding the crisis in Syria, and further discrediting himself by sticking out his tongue while being interviewed. Yet those gaffes are nothing in comparison to the things Trump was doing back in 2016. But that's the thing about Trump. He was already seen as so crass and bombastic that he was politically bulletproof. And this is the danger of the flip side of Trump Derangement Syndrome. The amount of people willing to excuse Donald Trump's seemingly self-destructive behavior that many people will mirror themselves. On the flip side of that coin, I thoroughly disagree with the current state of the Democrat Party, its media allies, and its current commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, who triggers the same level of disgust in me that so many anti-Trumpers had towards Donald Trump. However, it's not for nothing why almost half the country, at this point in time, seems to be deliriously focused on ensuring Donald Trump does not run for president again. Because enough of us can see the damage that Trump has caused the nation. He too has helped divide the nation despite having the power to unite it. A lot of Trump supporters like to downplay his talking by saying that he's not a politician, he says things like it is. Yet during the 2016 campaign trail, he openly encouraged violence towards people who didn't support him, and he called for a murderous dictator like Vladimir Putin to interfere in our elections regarding Hillary Clinton's emails. And yet I'll sort of give Trump credit that he didn't give a speech as openly divisive as Joe Biden did, where he called out MAGA Republicans as the nation's greatest threat, which is not true at all. All the while speaking as if he was a fascist dictator with blood-red lighting and armed military soldiers as his backdrop. I'll openly admit I loathe having to accept Joe Biden as our president. And with such a disingenuous careerist vice president that he was forced to choose with Kamala Harris in possibly the most counterproductive use of affirmative action since the civil rights movement. She has clearly posed a risk to our nation regarding the border and her thorough disregard for the amount of criminality and death it has produced in the form of human trafficking, fentanyl fatalities, and so many other problems. I'm clearly not a Biden supporter or even a Democrat, though I do consider myself a liberal as much as I consider myself a conservative, depending on the issue. I'll consider myself just as much a liberal as a conservative, yet I'm neither a registered Democrat nor a Republican and not even a libertarian, though I have been a registered member of all three of those parties until they of course let me down. And that's the point of this video. We as a nation, and I would even go so far as to say we as a species, all over the world, we need to do a much better job of realizing there's a time and place to be liberal and open to new ideas when old ones are failing, and a time and place to be conservative when it comes to preserving policies and systems that actually work and don't need revolutionizing. For example, considering all the woke ideology nowadays regarding the issue of gender and sexual norms, we do not need to experiment with pedophilia, let alone rape and murder. Yet we need to understand how and why those crimes happen and be open to the mental health services required to prevent them from happening. But more importantly, we as a species, I know that sounds kind of grandiose and pretentious, but bear with me. We need to do a much better job at electing our leaders by identifying who are the best candidates for these necessary positions of temporary power and realize who are not at all qualified to run in the first place. But thanks to the millions of dollars spent by interest groups that fund both the Democrat and Republican parties, every election cycle we're left to believe there's only two options, but we clearly have more. Our elections shouldn't be reduced to a virtual coin toss. But that's what fuels the Trump Derangement Syndrome many people are blind to when it comes to which side of the coin they're on. If I got anything wrong in this video, let me know in the comments down below. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for upcoming videos, and check out the links below for my original art and merchandise. And thanks for watching.